Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Just yesterday, I did a story about how the vast number of people, about 80%, when polled, wanted Holyrood to be abolished. They said it was a wasteful talking shop that served no purpose. Well, today we're going to do a follow-up on that, because there is another group of people who also want it abolished. This is not the general public, though. This is a very weird group. They are people who worked there. These are civil servants, ministers, people that are deeply vested interest in having the place open. And even they say it should be abolished. So perhaps it's time that it was. Let's have a look at this article. So, Scottish Government blasted by its own civil servants amid growing support for abolishing Holyrood. A number of former ministers, civil servants and special advisers were asked about how the government is run, with many of them offering damning evidence about the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon. Well, it wouldn't be anyone else, would it? It's been 16 years of the SNP, and Nicola Sturgeon's been there or thereabouts for most of that. The Scottish Government have been blasted by its own former ministers, civil servants and special advisers over its unclear decision-making amid growing calls for Holyrood to be scrapped. For the first time ever, a Scottish Parliament inquiry is looking into the inner workings of how the country is being run, exploring each of the two eras, the Labour Lib Dems administration, 1999 to 2007, and the current SNP cohort. Well, regardless of which era, since it started, it's been very, very ineffective and wasteful. But ever since really the SNP took over and then cloaked everything in scandal, in sleaze, in secrecy, it's just sucked. It's gone downhill. It's no openness. There's no believability. There's no plausibility to this talking shop. Everything it's done, without fail, has been an absolute disaster. Be it mental health, be it communications, be it transport, be it the NHS, be it education, be it social care. You can name anything the SNP have got devolved powers to do, and they have somehow managed to make things far worse than they could possibly imagine. But it's proven to be a damning reading, this report, or at least for some, with those at the heart of government slating decision-making as rushed, unclear and unstructured. No, it is rushed, I grant you, but it is clear and it is structured, but just not for the masses, just for the little cabal at the top. Now, with a £2 billion underspend, you have to ask where that money's gone. And that is a very, very important question, because you've got to say they were given a budget to do certain things. They came in 2 billion under budget, which means they must have 2 billion, kicking around somewhere. And you have to ask where that is, because it certainly hasn't gone into the running of the country. Anyway, Holyrood's Finance and Public Administration Committee took evidence from 15 top officials who offered a revealing insight into the inner workings for the civil service. This publication, which offers blistering opinions on the government, comes out during a time when there is growing concern in Scotland and England that devolution is not working. And I think it is quite clear to everyone who is not a foaming at the mouth, wide rolling eyes nationalist that this experiment is a failure. And once you have a failed experiment, it is time to stop it and revert to where you were until you have a better idea. A poll of Scottish Daily Express readers found that 80% would like Holyrood to be scrapped. I covered that story yesterday. Meanwhile, Tory peer Lord Frost has claimed there is support within his party for rolling back powers of devolution due to the SNP's misuse of it. Yes, basically, if you are the SNP and you are deliberately doing things that harm the country with the powers you've been given, then I think it's only right that those powers be taken away to stop you damaging even more. The Scottish Tories have spoken out against this, as has the Prime Minister himself, who rejected the calls, but warned he would not be granting any more powers. Those interviewed by the MSPs offered a blunt assessment of failings within the government. These included seeing clear financial rules as optional and failing to properly prepare, leading to problems with policies occurring as soon as they hit the real world. This is because they have bright ideas and they go, right, let's just look at all the benefits these bright ideas have, and then they steadfastly refuse to look at the other side of that coin. If we do this, what will be the consequences for this? What are the cost implications going forward? What will this do here, and how will it affect something over here? It's a cost. You have to look at the cost benefit analysis, and they never do that. They look only at the benefit side and don't look at the true cost. And I don't just mean in monetary terms, because everything you do has an opportunity cost, and the cost of doing one thing may absolutely damage something else. And they never look at that, because that would indicate that they've somehow failed, and they're a group, a party, an organisation that must always be seen as going forward, even when it's straight into the jaws of defeat. Nicola Sturgeon's administration came in for particular criticism. Well, you wouldn't have thought that possible, would you? Due to how centralised it was. Yes, it had power centralised in a very small cabal of about 5 people. No one else outside that group ever made decisions. They were presented with a choice. The choice was often, do this or leave the party, resign. This is the way we're going. We the elite in the party have decided that this is the direction, and you can do it or you can get out. And that's why they got into such a mess, of course. The former First Minister was known to keep tight control over her MSPs, and all decisions were scrutinised by her. And that is why she, much of their dislike, and I've got no love at all for Nicola Sturgeon, but I do admit that she was good at maintaining discipline within her party, and that is why she actually was a leader, and it's also why Humza Yousaf is definitely not a leader. More on that later. The fact that there was a lack of civil servants with any real-world experience was also criticised. The officials said there was a need for more economists and analysts within the civil service. A note of the meeting added, participants felt that civil servants needed more commercial expertise, private sector expertise, and the ability to understand negotiating tactics, something that has been systemically valued. It was suggested that civil servants didn't always know how to seek specific expertise. No, I mean, people would come up to them and say, look, if we do this, we're going to make this, and this, we can do that, we'll charge you 20 million for it. The first thing any businessman says is, I want a cost analysis on that. What am I getting for my 20 million? What are the breakdown? Tell me, why is it so high? Let's see, can you do it for half that? No? Okay, well, can you do it for 12, 60% of that? Find the minimum that they'll do it for. And then ask questions like, the metrics. What do you consider a success metric? What would you consider a failure metric? Impose failure metrics and say that the full value of the project will only be paid if they hit their success metrics, but there'll be fines if they hit any of the fail metrics. It concentrates the mind wonderfully, but the SNP weren't doing this. Any businessman knows that you do this. Any businessman goes into a contract knowing what he must do to make that contract work, and what he must not do in order to break it. But that's not what happens in the civil service, at least not in the Scottish civil service. But the document added that despite these concerns, there were thousands of decisions taken by the Scottish Government, and most worked perfectly well, with only errors being talking points. Well, that doesn't strike true at all, because virtually everything they've done has been wrong. Miss Sturgeon's government has come under fire recently for pushing through controversial bills, which have yet to see the light of day due to pressing issues with them. Yeah, the fact that they're completely bonkers, and the fact that they've all seemed to have come from the Greens. These include the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, a Green policy, which has been blocked by the UK government, and the Hate Crime Act, which is still not in force, despite being passed more than 2 years ago. And quite right too, because it would actually mean that I don't actually have to say anything, but somebody can take offence at things that they say I'm thinking. It is as mad and bad as that. I can have a conversation in my own house at which a third party is not present. They can assume that I'm talking about them in a bad way, and I would be guilty of a hate crime without evidence. That's how mad and bad this policy is. Those giving evidence also criticised the speed of the policy development, which went from being done in months early into devolution, now being completed in just days due to ministerial announcements. Yeah, and when you have idiots in charge who come up with bright ideas and then announce them and say, right, this is now the new law, what does that strike you as being very similar to? I mean, it is honestly, it's like the glory days of Mao Zedong. I am surprised that Scotland hasn't got, the four pests problem running across it at the moment, causing starvation to half the bloody population. Because the policies the SNP are coming up with are sheer lunacy. The SNP has been criticised in the past for creating sound bites and announcing new legislation without proper consultation or to make the party look better, like the Ferguson Marine contract. Yes, they announce it and then they go into negotiations and realise that the announcement they made is unachievable with the resources they have because they're morons. Scottish Conservative Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Economy, that is a long title, Liz Smith, said it's cause for major concern that the SNP government's decision making should be described as rushed, unclear and unstructured in evidence given by former ministers and senior officials. It's even more alarming that ministers sometimes regard clear financial rules as bureaucratic and optional. Yeah, they seem to think that these rules, which are in place for a reason, but they don't have to obey them. Well, if they don't obey them, I tell you, a short jail sentence would work wonders. It would concentrate the minds wonderfully. These people would suddenly realise how important these rules are. And I do think some people need to go to jail to send a message. Their comments about Nicola Sturgeon's views being given too much weight are very telling when it comes to centralising, secretive and authoritarian culture of the SNP. The public is only too well aware of several high-profile failures and scandals, from the ferries fiasco to the Lochaber smelter deal, for which the SNP government has been responsible, and large sums of public money wasted as a result. They've had 16 years in charge. They can blame no one but themselves. The SNP's characteristic indifference to the proper procedures and cavalier disregard for the rules is part of the reason why their party is now in meltdown and why people have finally lost patience with the neglect of Scotland's real priorities. Yeah, at the moment, cost of living, NHS and social care, they're the big three, followed closely, I would suggest, by transport, particularly ferries, and then the sort of communications. And that's it. Taxes, raising taxes should be down the bottom of the line. Gender affirmation, bottom of the line. Bottle deposit scheme, God help us. Anyway, a Scottish Government spokesman said, "We do not agree with this report." What are they going to say? What else? Of course they don't agree. They don't like it because they know it's true, but they can't ever admit that they agree with it. He says, and there are a number of processes which are routinely taken when making important policy decisions. Those processes are asking the Grand Supreme Leader, Nicola Sturgeon, if this is her plan, and if she says yes, then rushing it straight into implementation without any discussion or any look at the implications down the line. He says, we look forward to giving evidence to the committee in the near future. That's clearly a lie. The last thing they want to give is evidence. The last thing they want is any scrutiny by a committee, because they know how awful they truly are. And she always walked around with this smirky smile on her face, didn't she? As though she's having the best time ever and that nothing was wrong, even though her whole world was burning and slowly turning to shit. But she had that wee forced smirky smile going, hey, everything's great, everything's great. I loathe her. I loathe her worse than any creeping, slimy thing that crawls out from under a rock. And I shall come up. So there you are, when even the people who work in the building say it needs to be closed, that the SNP have destroyed everything, that any potential it had to ever work had been utterly removed by the fact that the SNP was so secretive and so stupid and so inefficient, and how they broke every rule they possibly could. And so the very people who work there saying, please God, close it, because even they know that it is just a waste of space. It's very telling. The one line in there, they talked about preparation of things. There's an old saying I learned in the military, which was, Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance, and never is a truer word spoken. And it's something that really has never entered the minds of anyone in the SNP, because they don't prepare. They get nothing right. They get everything wrong. Every decision that could be made is, without fail, always the wrong decision that is taken. How they've done anything is beyond belief. Luck. It must be pure luck, because it certainly isn't judgment. And I shall end there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, don't put yourself forward for the Scottish Parliament, it might not be there soon, and goodbye.